I haven't gotten any feedback on my other video that I made on the Book of Enoch, so I thought I would make another one more concise. See if I could fit it into a few minutes and just say the main point. The Book of Enoch is important to me. I've known about it for a long time. Mostly because of the Watchers, the idea of the fallen angels and all of that, the Nephilim. So I bought a copy, the R.H. Charles 1912 version. One of the number of translations, but his was the best. This was around 10 years ago. I'll look into it, I read it. Turns out that it was made from about 200 BC to maybe 100 AD, over a period of 250-300 years, by a number of people. It's actually a collection of different texts put together into one. It is not one person. One person did not write it, and certainly not 3000 BC. Enoch was antediluvian. He was a pre-flood patriarch. Seventh from Adam. Adam was born, or created, rather, 4004 BC, if you add up all the dates, all of the timelines of the lifespans. James Ussher was the first person to do this, and that's the date he came up with. He wrote a book called The Annals of the World. A long time ago. Anyway, so I made a video, and it goes into great depth on pretty much every aspect of the Book of Enoch. I forgot to mention a few things in that video, and I could have also mentioned the pyramid. I didn't even mention the pyramid. Some people believe that Enoch actually designed the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza. But that's another topic. I figured the pyramid would be its own, would be big enough to be its own video anyway. Anyway, so the origin of this book goes back no further than 200 BC to the Qumran sect, which was a schism from regular Judaism at the time, Second Temple Judaism. They felt it was divergent from what God would actually have said in the Torah. Mainly, for one thing, you have to have an ark to keep the covenant, and they no longer possessed the ark at that time. There's a problem that people seem to be overlooking, and it is right here with these dates. And I said this is the first picture that I used in my other video, so if anyone watched that, then those people that watched it would see this first, and it's the first point that I make, and it is the most important point for anyone to know concerning the Book of Enoch, and that is that Enoch was supposed to have been alive from 3382 BC to 3017 BC. The Bible says that God took him at the age of 365. He was 365 because there's 365 days in the year. The fable is, the story is, that he actually wrote 365 books. That's the story. But the idea of what a book was in the ancient world is a lot different than what it is today. If you buy a copy of Josephus, for example, the whole thing is like 1100 pages for the complete works of Josephus. That's a book. But he wrote it, they wrote it by hand, into codices. And the text of Josephus, the writings of Josephus, is broken up into 27 books. Because that's how large it would have been handwritten, you see. Anyway, So the flood is 2348. Here's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's down around 1780 BC. Adam, like I said, 4004. Enoch right in the middle between the two, between Adam and the flood. To me, this is very, very important because this right here proves to me there was never any real Book of Enoch classified as such, even though, according to people like Sitchin, Enoch would not have been his name. It's my personal opinion that Enoch is the Hebrew version of the name Enki. Enki was the brother of Enlil. Enlil means Lord of the Sky or Lord of the Command. Sitchin would say Lord of the Command, but the regular version, the regular translation is Lord of the Sky. Enki, his brother, is Lord of the Earth. And it's my personal opinion that Enki became Hebrewized later on as Enoch. And since he was a Melchizedek, he would have been a king of the earth at the time. All the Melchizedeks would have been, in the eyes of God, a king of the earth. But anyway, you have here, this right here shows you the Sumerian pictographic cuneiform. Cuneiform is not Sumerian. Sumerian is pictographic, as is shown here with these little pictures. You have a picture of a fish. That was the symbol for fish. 3000 BC, this is what it was. Over time it became this. By the time you get down to the Assyrian Empire, biblical times, they were using this. For 3000 BC, it was this. So if Enoch is going to write a book, he's going to be writing it in these symbols. Not even cuneiform. Cuneiform is much later. 3000 BC, you've got pictographs. 1500 BC, you've got cuneiform. Here is early cuneiform, here is later cuneiform. I said this in the other tape. Obviously, here's the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was after Enoch. He's back around 2800 BC. I think the oldest copies for the text that they have, it goes back to around 1700 BC. So even that's 1,000 years after Gilgamesh, right? But it's still cuneiform in 1700 BC. The point is, if Enoch ever wrote a book, ever wrote a text, it would be in cuneiform, and it would be copied, it would be preserved as such somewhere. Also, Enoch's name, there is a king's lineage which labels the gods. It starts with the gods, and then it goes down to the kings, or demigods, and then regular normal kings. And there's a list of 10 kings given by Berosus that Sitchin equates with the biblical patriarchs, going down to Noah. And in that list, the one that would be equated with Enoch is called Enmedur Anki. So that is the that would be the equivalent of Enoch's name in Sumerian, even though it's actually a title. It means priest of the bond between heaven and earth, which is pretty much what a Melchizedek is. Anyway, like I said, there are different parts of the Book of Enoch. You really only need to worry about two. The first part, the oldest part, is the Book of the Watchers from about 200 BC. Goes up to around the 36th chapter, 1 to 36. Then there's a section, the section of parables, goes down, I believe, to around 81. Then there's a small section in the middle, which is called the Book of the Luminaries, which is him talking about the orbits of the sun, the moon, and planets. This is the most important part of the text. It goes from 72 to 82, and it's stuck in the middle. I looked up an audio version of the book and being read. It was 4 hours long, 4 hours and 8 minutes. And of course, I'm thinking no one's going to watch that. If they do, they'll start watching it. They'll watch the first 20 or 30 minutes, which will be about, that'll be the book of the watchers. But then they'll trail off. They'll leave. They won't listen to the rest of it. There's 5 major sections. And like I said, the only 2 that are really worth reading are the first 36 chapters, and then 72 to 82, Book of Luminaries. The other parts are just it's bullshit. It's just random stuff. The 4th part and 5th part are the so-called history of the book and the so-called prophecy of the book. And obviously, if you read the section of the prophecies, it's post-dated to the time that it was written, but it was written from the perspective of Enoch, and he was supposedly giving prophecies, showing the future ahead of time, going all down through the biblical history, all the way down to the time that it was written. This is how you can know mainly when the books were written, like the Book of Daniel. The Book of Daniel was written about the same time as the Book of Enoch, and really shouldn't be in the Bible either. Anyway, this part, and it's the main part of just trust me, if you listen to that part or you read that part of the book, you'll see what I mean. He's going through and he's talking about these animals. He's equating the empires to animals. He's equating people like Alexander to a ram and things like that. And it's just goofiness. These people are all calling themselves Enoch. They're writing text in the name of Enoch, but it's nothing like what he would have written. The Book of the Luminaries, obviously talking about the stars, talking about the heavens, which is the zodiac, and how the sun moves against the zodiac. You have the 12 signs, which are the 12 portals. I don't care what anyone tells you. It is the zodiac. You got 12 in the north, 12 in the south. 3 in the north. You've got 3 in the south, 3 in the east and west. That makes 12. He talks about this. If you just listen to the words, if you listen to the Book of the Watchers, and just listen carefully, you will see that it's bogus. He actually says things in there that are just crazy. Even in the Book of the Luminaries, he says the sun is 7 times brighter than the moon. He says that more than once. He talks about, at one point, he talks about the rain coming from the windows of heaven. This is something I've heard of. It's come up lately. I've heard of it. I've heard of it long ago. It's part of the ancient model. It is part of the biblical world model. It's added that there is water above the firmament. But to say that, they were saying that the stars were part of the firmament, that it was the dome. That was the firmament, and that the water was above the dome, which is to say above the stars. And then they said there were windows in heaven, which is holes in the firmament, which means that's what they said, that the rain. They said there was water above the dome because they did not understand the water cycle. And they said that the rain came from windows in the sky, windows in the heavens, which was holes in the dome that would open up and the water would come through. That was what made the rain. The reason they said that there was water in the sky was because they were too stupid to know that it came from the clouds. That's why they said there was water above. But the sun and the moon are below. They are beneath the dome. And so when you have water coming from the windows of heaven, it's actually raining down from above on top, raining on the sun, raining on the moon. Which is a problem. Anyway, it's also a problem with people that want to say that there is no gravitational model, that it's all about density, because last I checked, water is more dense than air. What it would be is not water in the sky. It's not water. It would be fire. You have the 4 fundamental elements. Fire is equated with plasma. If there is anything in the sky holding this stuff up, what it would be is the ether. It's the ether that's above the sky, not water. Plato talk about the ether all the time. Why do they have to make this water now, when obviously that's what it would be? They use ether as part of their proof for why the Earth is flat and stationary. But what the hell's going to be in space if not the ether? That's what it is. Anyway, back to Enoch. He's talking about the sun moving through the portals, moving through the 12 signs. He calls them portals instead of the actual signs of the zodiac because they change. They're not always in the same location. Obviously, they move throughout the night sky. But so he's giving them in terms of directions. There's always 3 in this direction. There's always 3 in that direction, right? So he's not actually naming the individual sign because Leo is not always in the east. It's there sometimes, but not all the time. So he's naming them in terms of direction. There's also a section of the book, the second half. I uploaded the first half of the Book of the Watchers, not the second, because after, I think it's chapter 16 or something, he starts talking about going around the earth. He's going to the north, and he finds the 7 mountains, and then he goes to the east, and he finds 7 mountains there. And he just trails off, and it's not talking about the Watchers anymore. It's just talking about other random stuff that I don't see has any real value. Besides, there's always 7 mountains, right? And there's 3 in the east and 3 in the south and 1 in the center. That's also astronomical to me. He's still talking about the signs, even though he's talking about being on the earth, and the one in the center is actually Polaris, because God is supposed to be in the center. God is the center of all things. All these signs, all the cherubs, these are the cherubs. These are the angels. The signs, this Virgo, that's a cherub. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I've got the pictures down here. Way on down the list here. These cherubs. This is Ezekiel. Here's his cherubs, the 4 cherubs holding up the throne of God. Here they are in this crazy depiction of this guy with the 4 faces, because they were said to have 4 faces. They have 4 faces because they were the 4 signs, the 4 cardinal points of the zodiac. As is shown right here. This is the cherub. This is the Sphinx made of these 4 cardinal points. Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, and Aquila, which is another version of Scorpio. Okay, but this is what they had at the time. And all these stories of myths and legends and all these crazy creatures and all of the Greek chimeras, everything you hear about in history of all these crazy chimeras, things like that, it's actually just the stars. All myth comes from the zodiac, from the stars, from the ancients making up stories about Orion, about Cassiopeia, Theseus, Hercules. These are all stars, they're constellations, and they made up stories, they made up myths about them to tell their kids, to entertain. It was just mythology. It was pre-Homeric times. Just where the idea of the Homeric epics comes from. The Iliad and the Odyssey were just a collection of stories that presumably some guy named Homer put together into one narrative. Kind of like Hesiod, I believe it was, made the Metamorphoses. I believe that was him. Anyway, so there was a guy that wrote a book called the Metamorphoses, which was a long story, weaving all these different gods together through history. It was basically a Greek pagan version or a Latin version of a Bible, a mythological Bible. And it ended with the deification of Julius Caesar, by the way. I had that book, but I couldn't read it very much. It's just so stupid to me. All these different gods interacting. No historical value at all. But anyway, you have a calendar here. It's all about the damn calendar. That is the main point of the Book of Enoch. And the calendar is, you have 12 months because you have 12 signs of the zodiac. Here they are. They spin around the center point, which is Polaris. You have Draco. You have the 2 dippers, or the 2 bears, spinning around it. Alright. You have the cherubs spinning around. The cherubs hold up the throne of God because the throne of God is the center. The throne of God is Polaris. All of this is the heavens. These are the center of heaven, the top of the heavens, which is the top of the dome. All the stars spin around him, all the constellations, all the angels, which are the stars. The angels are the constellations. When he talks about the angels doing this, the angels doing that, when he says he went to this heaven, he went to the third heaven, the fourth heaven, he's talking about the planets, the 7 planets, all the 7 heavens. That's where he went. He's saying he went to Mars, he went to Jupiter, he went to the moon, and he caught up with the angels there. But he's talking about going to the stars and going to those angels, going to those constellations and dealing with those types. In the Bible, you have archangels, you have regular angels, you have cherubs, you have thrones, you have seraphim. Cherubs have 4 wings because the earth has 4 winds. You have the seraphs are the flaming ones, which because they are on fire. You have, those are the stars, the angels are the stars. Now listen to me, all the angels in the background, all the stars are angels of heaven. And they're obeying God because they are obeying the order of all things, the order of the cosmos. All the stars, all the planets, everything that cuts against the stars, the comets, the planets, meteors, anything in the sky that's not going by the ordination of the stars in the background, the constellations that are the same all the time. Anything that's divergent from that pattern is considered to be fallen or deviant from the nature and the will of God. Those are the fallen angels, those are the demons, those are the 7 Anunnaki. That's where all of this comes from. That's the point. And when Enoch goes to those heavens, he's talking to those fallen angels. That's what he says, and he makes intercession for them. He's talking to Azazel, he's talking to all these guys. This is the point. All mythology comes from the stars. Anyway, here you have the Gregorian calendar broken up into 365 days. That comes from the Julian calendar. The Gregorian calendar is a reworking of the Julian system because by that time, for the precession of the equinox, Easter had been offset, and instead of occurring at the proper time next to the vernal equinox in the spring, it was happening like a month too soon. So they had to reset the calendar and offset it so that you don't notice the precession of the equinox, and the equinox stays the same every year. That's the whole point of the leap year and why we have to keep track of the years. The Julian system was 365 1/4 day. Exact. Every 4 years was an extra day. That's actually not entirely accurate. And so by over 1400 years, 1500 years, they lost a number of weeks, about 3 weeks or so they lost. And they actually, when they made the Gregorian calendar under Pope Gregory, they had to skip over 3 weeks, and they just cut them out of the calendar and jumped 3 weeks ahead to realign the dates back with Easter. Anyway, but the Julian system itself was a reformed calendar under Julius Caesar about 50 BC. Okay, and that was actually adding in the quarter days, which they didn't even have before. So you can imagine how bad it was then. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's about a calendar. Before then, you had the Sumero-Babylonian calendar with the month here of, you got the 12 months. You've got Nisanu, Alaru, Simanu, Demuzu. You've got Abu, Alulu, Dasritu. And then you come over here and you realize you have the Hebrew system, the Hebrew months, Nisan, Ayar, Silvani, Tammuz, Ab, Elul, Tishri. Obviously those are the same months. They picked up the Babylonian calendar when they were in Babylonian captivity in the 500s BC, the 6th century BC. They were in Babylon for 70 years. They picked up the Babylonian calendar, which was a Sumerian calendar. That's why the Jewish calendar starts, if you date it back, it goes back to 3700 BC, 3760. That's why the Jewish calendar has a different date than ours does. It's because that's when the Babylonian calendar started. It's the calendar of Nippur. All right. That's also why it's wrong, because I just said before that Usher dated Adam back to 4004 BC, but the Jewish calendar only goes back to 3700 BC. That's why we're in the 5700s now in the Jewish calendar, because it's 3760 plus the Gregorian date, 3760 plus 2016. All right, now here is another version of the Jewish calendar with all the the festivals: Passover, First Fruits, Pentecost. You got the Day of Atonement down here in September. That's the Yom Kippur here. Not Yom Kippur. This is Rosh Hashanah here. The New Year. Then Atonement's later, 10 days later. Okay, I'm talking too fast. The point of the book, to me, at least that section of the book, And whoever wrote this section is the only one that's not lying. Everybody else that took a hand in writing the Book of Enoch was just making it all up. But the guy that wrote 72 to 82 was talking about this right here, and he's the only one that is speaking straight. He's talking straight, and it's the only part that actually matters in the whole book, out of all the 108 chapters. He was talking about what should be known as the Enochian calendar. 365 and 1/4 days made of 12 months of 30 days. Alright, except every third one at the equinox and the solstices would have 31 days. And then when you get to the end, you add in 2 days. So then you have one that's 32. This all adds up to 365. Then of course you have the quarter day that's added in every fourth year. Now the Greeks had an Olympic cycle of 4 years. They did not even count by the years. They counted by what's called the Olympic cycle, which is every 4 years, 1461 days, and the extra day is added in. That's why we have the Olympics now every 4 years, and that's why we have our presidents sworn in and elected every 4 years. The presidents are actually elected and sworn in based on the Olympic cycle on the leap years. Just think about it. That's why we have elections every leap year, is because they are the Olympians. They're being equated to the old gods. All the presidents are deified, basically. Anyway, here's a depiction of the 12 signs of the zodiac with being equated with the 12 tribes. So that in the Bible, when you have these signs, when you have these animals being referred to, the lion, the virgin, this would be the eagle, you have, these different people, these different types, the ram, the bull. When you have these figures referred to in the Bible, they're actually referring to those particular tribes. Anyway, here's the Masonic symbol, the Masonic heraldry, where it has these 4 symbols that are the same as these right here. Here's a depiction of the spinning stars. I know flat earthers don't like these pictures, but here is God's throne at the top of the dome. Here are all the stars spinning around the heavens, holding up the dome. Like I just said, these zodiacal constellations are the cherubs holding up the throne. I'm not even, that's just how it is. Here's a depiction, a vector horoscope of the 12 signs, dividing them out by degrees. Here is the actual number of 365 degrees, showing you the overlap of the constellations, how they're different sizes. Here's a depiction of the 12 months again. Here's a depiction of another set, divided the sky into 8 parts, with Polaris in the center. You have the constellations around here. Here's Scorpio, here's Libra, here's Orion, Taurus is over here, here's the Eagle. Okay, now this is taken from this thing here, right here, a Sumerian star map from 3300 BC. This depicts what this shows here. This is a vision of the night sky from the Middle East, with Polaris at the center and all these little constellations depicted here. This is unlike any other tablet, any other clay tablet you will find. It depicts the night sky. It is round. Most all tablets are going to be, they're very small, they're round. No, they're not round, they're square. This one is round. Anyway, you can see here, it is in cuneiform. This is actually a copy of an older tablet, but it's dated to 3300 BC. It was found, this actual one, I believe, dates back to something like 700 BC. But the star map is actually dated to 3300 BC. And what that is the exact time frame of Enoch, who is said to have written a book about the stars and the heavens. And if he wrote one, it's going to be in cuneiform. And that was the point I was trying to make in my other video. Okay, so there you go. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.